Thank you for joining us at the Kentucky Book Festival. This is the UK Healthcare Writers Room. My name is Parker Van Houten. I'm a fifth-year senior at the University of Kentucky, and joining us this afternoon, our guest speaker has taught literature, composition, and creative writing to thousands of high school and college students for 33 years before she turned her attention to putting a novel in her heart on paper. Please welcome Susan Beckham Zurenda.
Day and talk about stories a little bit, family stories maybe in particular. But what I'm going to say about creating genuine emotion in characters is true, whether your stories are completely made up or whether they do come from real people that you've known, that it doesn't change. So, family stories, we've all got them and we want to tell them. And the custom is ubiquitous in all cultures, all in all eras throughout human history. I guess it's an impulse that is inherent in our human nature. We tell our family stories for ourselves or for future generations of our family or for sometimes folks outside our family. And if you choose to write a family story, or as Bells for Eli, my novel is actually fiction that was inspired by a family story, a well told story should have a reason for being, to transform ourselves and readers, to make some kind of difference in our world, to express what it means to be human. So, Bells for Eli, and I'm going to be using a couple of passages from the novel to illustrate some of my points today, is the story of two first cousins, Delia and Eli, growing up across the street from each other in the small town South of the 60s and 70s, which was the South was small town was still a very insular time then, but the counterculture is encroaching, and it is encroaching in the book. They they are first cousins who live across the street. They form an inordinately close relationship because Eli has an accident when he's on his third birthday. His father negligently leaves Red Devil Lye in a Coca-Cola bottle. He'd been using the chemical to blow up balloons for his son's birthday party, but it looked like Coke. And Eli drinks it. And he survives, obviously, but he has a metal trach in his throat. He has a strange string through his nose and behind his ear. It makes him grotesque to other children. And so Delia, his cousin, becomes his only friend, his defender, his protector, his love. And they form a kind of unconditional love. And the book takes you through those childhood years up to their college years. And once he's an adolescent, the outer disfigurement of Eli's accident is gone. He is a handsome and charismatic young man who bolts into adolescence, and a whole new host of conflicts enter because you have to remember they form this bond of unconditional love in childhood. What happens when you become adolescent? Now, that story, Bells for Eli, is inspired by a family story. I had a first cousin, he's no longer living, who actually did swallow Red Devil Lye on his second birthday, and his father was doing the same thing, blowing up balloons for his birthday, left the chemical in the Coke bottle, and Danny drank it. So I didn't grow up in the same state. Uh, Danny's was in Plainfield, New Jersey. I was in the small town of Lancaster, South Carolina. I didn't grow up with him. Most of what I know of his compromised childhood has come to me through stories secondhand, through visits, seeing him, getting to know him when we were children, through his sisters, whom I'm close with today. But I took that story as my inspiration and created the novel, of course, which is mostly made up. So we're going to focus today on creating emotion in characters because it's so important. If we can't feel what the characters feel, then we can't live their lives with them. And then they don't matter to us, right? They don't matter. And so I can say, well, Bells for Eli is a story where we see that love has the power to overcome cruelty and pain. I can tell you that all day long. But if I can't make you feel that, then I'm going to fail. So being able to generate genuine emotion is so important, whether they are fictional or whether they're true. Um, you're not just writing events. In the end, we don't really care that much about events. We care about people. And so far, so readers can feel what we want them to feel, we're going to do that. We're going to talk about emotions. But before, I don't, don't really know what your background is and how much story writing ability or practice you've done. So I'm just going to do a of um, little bit of background on story, not much, but just a little bit. Talk about a couple of basics with you. And I meant to already go to that slide when we talk about who we are and why does it matter. It's not the events that matter. It's people that we care about. I'm skipping some because we have to shorten it today. All right. So some real basic stuff about story is that plot and story are not, of course, the same thing. Plot is just a series of interlocking, often causally related events, but do they matter? If I say, well, it was a beautiful day in South Carolina, we decided to take a drive to the beach and we packed our towels and we packed our sand toys and went and had a great time, walked on the beach, soaked up the sun, picked up shells, went home. Who cares? Really? Okay, that was nice. That was pleasant. But it doesn't matter. There's nothing inherently in there for us to care about. And so story, plot is one element of story, right? Um, all of the things, all of the elements, setting, style, character, theme, more, point of view, all of these things combined make up story. And plot is just one element. A plot, if you think about it, especially if it's a family story, right? Because here you've got this thing from life in your head, it contains all the matter surrounding an event that comes to your mind. But a story is going to select pieces of that plot very carefully to build toward effect and meaning. Why do I want to tell this? What do I want people to understand that will stay with them? So we don't include incidents just because they happened. Okay, for example, one of my heroes and role models is my maternal grandmother. She was a florist, and she had to raise my mother and my mother's sister on her own after her husband was gassed in World War I and subsequently became alcoholic. She was educated to be a school teacher. She hated teaching, and she started planting flowers and eventually became a successful florist. Okay, so why do I want to tell her story? Why tell it? Well, for me, it's about human resilience. It's about gutting through it and becoming successful no matter what. So let's think about all of the events I might know of from my grandmother's life. I would not include details in an argument in the backyard between my mother and her sister over who was going to get to drive the car that day while my grandmother is over planting her chrysanthemums. I wouldn't include that argument, would I? Unless somehow it's relevant to my grandmother's struggle to persevere as a single mother. Does that make sense? Okay, picking and choosing. So, for our family stories or for our fiction for that matter to be meaningful, it's got to tell not only a tale, but express some kind of important values or blunders or wishes or hopes or disappointments or triumphs common to all of us human beings. Well, I'm doing the wrong thing. There we go. Okay. One other sort of basic here, and that's the difference between summary and scene. And if you all have experience, I know I'm probably boring you, but I'm going to mention it anyway. There are two ways that we tell a story. One is through summary, and one is through scene. We need both, but we need scene a whole lot more than we need summary. Summary tells us what happened. Scene shows us what happened. And we cannot feel what characters feel unless we can live it with them. And that's got to come through scene. So a summary is going to typically cover a longer period of time in a short space, while a scene is going to cover usually a short period of time in a longer space, if you want to think about it like that. Summary is useful. I'm not knocking it. You got to have it. You got to have it. But nothing frustrates a reader more than to be told significant events are taking place and to be denied the experience. So, if you'll indulge me, I'm going to read a scene that's got a little bit of summary in it from Bells for Eli. And then let's think about what kind of emotion comes through that scene, how it comes through, and where is the summary, and why did I choose to write that part in summary and not in scene. Okay. So this scene takes place when Delia and Eli are in second grade. They've left school. They often walk home from school together. They've exited through the side door out of the school into the schoolyard, and it's Halloween. And Delia doesn't think about the fact that nobody else is around, and they should have gone out the front door. And they get accosted by some bullies, people who want to feel better about themselves, and so they bully those that are weaker than they are. And in this scene, Eli's father, Gene, whom Delia calls Uncle Gene, he's her blood uncle, he's alcoholic. He is, after all, the person responsible for Eli's accident. And in his own dysfunctional way, he loves his son. He wants his son to be normal like other boys, and he can't make that happen. But what he tries to do is to defend his son in his own kind of mixed up way. So that's the scene, the setup for you. The novel is first person narration, and it's Delia speaking. Try to listen for details, try to pick up on emotion. On the afternoon of Halloween, as we left the school building, passing under the breezeway onto the grass of the side lawn with no teachers in sight, Willard and his sidekicks caught up to Eli and me. We were walking home from school that day, and as we usually did, cut through the side yard because it was a shorter way. Unwittingly, we'd never considered how this exit hit us from the front of the school where all the cars and people were. He doesn't need a costume, does he, Joe? Willard's taunt exploded suddenly behind us. Nah, 'cause he's already wearing his freak suit, Joe said, sniggering. I turned just enough to see Joe bent over laughing, amused with himself. Don't turn around, Eli, I cautioned. I tried to take his hand to hurry us along, but he shook it off. Still, thankfully, he didn't stop. He kept walking, and I stayed at his side. Hey, turn around. What's the matter, Frady Cat? Scared 'cause no teacher's here to save you? It was Willard talking again. We seen your daddy in his van, watching over you. Where's your daddy and his cookies? Gene is a cookie salesman. Eli couldn't bear it. The human need to defend himself triumphed, and he turned. I turned with him. to see Jimmy and Joe mocking my cousins by holding their fingers to their throats and pretending to wheeze. Eli took a step forward. Willard took a step forward also and held up his fist. I started to run for help, and then out of nowhere, perhaps as he might have jumped in rage from a foxhole to charge at three enemy krauts, Uncle Gene appeared amid the standoff. But instead of an M1 rifle, he held a grayed out axe handle. "I'll show you a fraidy cat," he yelled, brandishing the old handle back and forth in front of his chest. The smell of alcohol poured off of him and permeated the air. I shrieked. I twisted from the scene in front of me toward the school. I didn't know what to do, whether to run back into the building and look for a teacher or stay at Eli's side. I remained, unable to think clearly in the moment that there was nothing here a second grade girl could do. Willard backed away, but my uncle kept coming. Eli stood mute, too shocked, I guess, to move. I don't think Uncle Gene intended to hurt any of those boys. He intended to scare them, but he was too unsteady in his movements. The three boys backed up a few steps at a time, huddled in unison, trying to maneuver themselves as a unit to pivot and run. But they couldn't achieve the momentum because Uncle Gene impeded them, continuing to swing the axe handle just inches from their fused bodies. "Come on, man up," Uncle Gene yelled. "You're tough. Who's first?" He swung wildly forward and lost his balance, pitching onto his hands and knees. The heavy end of the handle flew forward too and connected hard with Jimmy's kneecap. He fell, screaming in pain. The other boys lost their balance and toppled onto him. "Oh no," I said, no shriek this time, but a whimper. Eli stood mute. Uncle Gene righted himself and sat on the ground. He picked up the axe handle and set it in his lap. The stiff black bristles of his hair gleamed with sweat in the sunlight as he shook his head back and forth, as though trying to understand what had happened. Willard and Joe stood and ran. Jimmy did not move. Miss Crockett called the police, who took Uncle Gene to jail. She's the principal. Then Jimmy's parents arrived, and his father lifted him into the back seat of the car. Though it didn't look too awful, a patch of raw red ringing his knee rather than blood gushing from the hit. Still, Jimmy could not stand, and it seemed clear his kneecap was broken. Mama arrived to retrieve Eli and me. Mary Lily, Eli's mother, had ridden with her to drive the cookie van, parked out of sight at a haphazard angle on the other side of the softball field, back home before she called the magistrate. My father was at work. Now, most of this is seen. What emotion is coming through? Anybody want to just holler it out? What sort of emotions are here? Anger and fear? Yes. Who's angry? Gene is angry. Eli is angry. Who's scared? Eli is scared and angry. Oh, so you can have more than one emotion at the same time. How about that? Delia's scared. And those bullies get scared too, because that's the way bullies are. They're really not tough at all, right? So what am I using to create that emotion? I'm using dialogue, right? I'm using Delia's thoughts. I'm using concrete imagery, right? Even Uncle Gene maybe is a little scared. The stiff black bristles of his hair are gleaming with sweat. Of course, he's drunk too. But there are a lot of different tools in the toolbox to show, not tell, that, Uncle Gene brought an axe to try to defend his son in the schoolyard and things didn't work out well and Jimmy got his kneecap broken. You're not going to feel anything from that, are you? You're not. And I want you to feel that fear. I want you to feel that anger. Now, Yes, at the end, once the crisis action is passed, Jimmy's kneecap is broken, it's over, right? So the principal calls the police. Jimmy goes to the hospital. Uncle Jim goes to jail. Mary Lily and Delia's mom come pick up the cookie bag. Why don't I put that in scene? Why did I create scenes for that? Right. It's unnecessary. It is not part of what I want to accomplish. I want to show something about Uncle Gene in that scene as much as anything. So now what I got to do is I got to get to the next place, right? So I need summary to quickly get me to the next place I need to go. So it's useful. You got to have it, but you want to depend more on the scene. Okay. Good. Wonderful. Um, That's a good point. That's right. We as readers are pretty satisfied that Jimmy got what was coming to him, you know? That's exactly right. Exactly. Okay. Now, um, another thing to talk about here, just real briefly, is there, of course, is conflict here. And your stories have got to have conflict to be engaging. So if you don't have conflict, you may not have much emotion engaged. It can sometimes conflict can almost be, or you could call it tension. It can almost be positive attention, right? But it's got to have conflict. Is there conflict in this scene? Yes. Yeah. From the moment that Willard jumps out and taunts him and says he doesn't need a Halloween costume, that tension is there. Okay. And even though we think about a book overall, having sort of this beginning, middle, and end, actually individual scenes often rise to a climactic moment as well, which is, of course, that happens here. You've got it building up. You've got the bullies taunting him. You've got Delia hoping that Eli will just come on with her. That protectiveness of hers is coming into play. She hopes he'll just go along with her. He can't do it. He's a stoic little boy, and he wants to prove himself. So he stops. And now the tension gets stronger, and and then Uncle Gene or Gene comes onto the scene. Now it's getting toward a higher pitch, and it gets to, of course, a fever pitch once he starts wielding that axe handle. And then where's the climactic moment? Yep, kneecap gets hit. And the resolution, so to speak, is just the aftermath of what happens as a result. Okay. So when we are developing emotion, of course, we're always doing it with having conflict in our stories. Okay, let's get to the emotion. Watch my time here. So, as I mentioned, characters in conflict in your stories have to come to life to create meaning. And a crucial method of doing that is to build genuine emotion. Okay. Now, just listen to this, and I want to ask you if you really feel emotion, you might just, do you feel it? After apologizing to each other, they whispered together through the night, and as he told her all about his past, she began to realize that she was falling in love with him. I am being told something I want to experience, right? Holy cow. I mean, these two people are spending the night together and they're whispering into the night, and he's telling her about his past, and from that, whatever that is, she realizes she's falling in love with him. Lord have mercy, let me live it with you, please. But I don't get to. Okay. So if you'll indulge one more passage, because this one we're going to talk about the tools in the toolbox and how they come into play. In this scene, Delia and Eli are 12. They are pre adolescents. They are on the cusp between innocence and understanding, knowledge, sexual knowledge. And we know more than they know. We know where they're headed more than they know where they're headed. I want you to see if you feel that. Do you feel that kind of, I don't know if the conundrum is the right word, but that kind of betwixt and between that Delia feels here? And what are thoughts, movements? And I don't mean by movements action. I mean like characters who pull on their ear or take their glasses on and off all the time, like people do. Little movements. Actions are what move the plot forward, and they're certainly part of it. Dialogue, appearance, setting. These are the tools in the toolbox that enable us to create emotion. Okay. So, do you feel a kind of budding romantic tenderness, and can you experience it along with the characters? If so, I've done my job. If not, I haven't. They are out at Eli's grandmother's home in the country. She is from landed aristocracy. Delia's from first generation college parents, and they're out at his grandmother's antebellum home. And they often go out there to spend time, to play in the woods or climb in the barn or what have you. And they're spending the night this time. And it begins with Delia in the bathtub. I sat in the old clawfoot tub, luxuriating in the bath oil beads I found in the jar on the shelf above the sink. I tried not to think about being scared to sleep alone. Out of the bath, I called to Eli, asked if he was coming upstairs soon. On my way, he called. With the windows open in my bedroom, it wasn't stifling, but warm enough to push the crocheted spread to the end of the bed, even wearing my coolest night clothes, baby doll pajamas with puffed sleeves and lace around the scoop neck. I lay beneath only the sheet, feeling exposed. For a moment, I thought I saw the antique cradle rocking on its own in the corner of the room. I closed my eyes. I clutched the second pillow to my chest. I heard Eli climb the stairs and go into the bathroom. I tried to fall asleep, but I smelled the old smell of the room and wondered at the shadows, feared its ghosts in the dark. I heard my cousin pad toward his room across the hall and call to him. He appeared at my doorway. Are you sleepy, Eli? I asked. I am sleepy, he said. Promise to stay awake until I fall asleep, I said. If I can, he said. Are you scared? He asked. And Delia's always scared when she's not at home. Do you believe in ghosts? I asked. You know I do, but they don't scare me, he said. Well, they scare me at night, but not in the day, I said. Will you lie down with me until I fall asleep? He walked into the room and climbed into the space beside me. The ghosts here won't hurt you, he said. Don't worry, this is their home. They don't mind us being here. We're family. I handed the pillow I clutched to Eli. He smoothed it. He placed it beside my head and lay next to me. I watched the breeze toss the white organdy curtains. I wish they'd stop moving, I said. Close your eyes, Eli said. Turn your pillow over to the cool side and it will feel good against your face. I did what he said. Do you want to cuddle? He asked. He reached his arm out across my stomach. The word unsettled me. It made me squeamish, but it soothed me too. I didn't know what I felt. I ignored the anxiety the word produced, for Eli's presence was the stronger pull. I fell asleep, comforted with his arm around me. Do you feel what Delia's feeling? Maybe. What's she feeling? What a lot of 12-year-old girls begin to feel, right? a kind of yearning, a kind of want, and it's from her cousin Eli. And yet she doesn't know what to make of it, right? Um, it makes her feel good. It makes her feel comfortable to be comforted. And it makes her uneasy too. Not only because she's changing over from innocence to knowledge, but because Eli is her cousin. So, just real briefly, what are some of the thoughts that might let us know that? We know she's uncomfortable, nervous, a little bit scared, sleeping in that room in that old house by herself, right? So I've got to set that up so we can believe that she is feeling the need for connection. And so she lets us know those thoughts. And then the dialogue, she says to Eli, promise to stay awake until I fall asleep. And then he says, okay, which is really kind of an action too, because he's made a commitment, right? What about, we don't have a lot of time. Let me skip down to, let me show you how appearance can create the emotion. What's she wearing? Baby doll pajamas, which on the surface are all about innocence, right? Pink, baby doll, even the name. And I don't know if people wear baby doll pajamas anymore, but we sure did in the 60s. And they're short and they've got lace. So they're pink and they exude innocence, but at the same time, they also project what? Sexuality. So there you go. Even in what's the appearance of something is, can help to create that emotion that you're looking for. One other quick thing, because I want to get to some things that you do to create emotion well and don't do to create, so you don't create it badly. But setting. If you notice, when the scene starts, Eli's downstairs. Then he comes upstairs. And then she calls to him. And then he's outside her door. And then he's inside the room. And then he's in the bed with her. And then he's putting his arm around her. What happened? Physical distance closed in. And as the physical distance closes in, so does the emotion build. And let me go back 1 second to dialogue, because there's one word here. Even when I wrote it, it made me go, ooh. One word. When he asks her, do you want to cuddle? And that one word is so emotionally charged. She does, but it makes her feel squeamish, right? Okay, I wish we had more time, because there's so many more things that we could talk about in how these basic tools help you to build emotion. But I want to go forward and just give you some ideas. When writers fail to create genuine emotion, you may have the tools, you may be using dialogue, you may be using thoughts, you may be using all these things, but here are some traps. Cliche, of course. It's so easy to say somebody's mad as a wet hen or has butterflies in her stomach, but that's the sort of language that quickly falls out of our heads. It's unfortunately, I mean, at one time they were fresh figures of speech, but unfortunately, they don't affect us. They just go over us like he said, she said. They don't affect us. And so if you're going to use figurative language, and it's difficult for me anyway, but if you're going to do it, you're going to need fresh figurative language. And Anne Hood, in her book, Creating Character Emotions, she recalls being at a baseball game with a friend who pointed to a red-faced man and said, His face looks like a boiled ham. That's all I need. That guy is mad, mad, mad. Now, it's not easy, to come up with those figures of speech. Don't worry about it. If they don't work, if you don't do it, don't worry about it. It's better to use literal language than it is to rely on cliche. Lack of specificity can be another issue. Sometimes a writer will rely on non-specific emotion and hope that the reader will fill in the gaps. I got news for you. That ain't the way it works. Burden's always on the writer, not the reader. And so you've got to use the concrete details. You got to use that cradle rocking. You got to use those baby doll pajamas. You've got to use that arm across the stomach. You've got to have the specific concrete details to lead the reader into the character's emotion. Again, back to Anne Hood. She says, think about concrete details as emotional traffic signs. And I wish I had time to give you I'm going to do it anyway. What time is it? Okay, real quick. Okay, one of these little passages is meant to express pleasure, the other displeasure, in the same sort of summer camp setting. You tell me which one you feel. Nancy remembered how she loved summer camp. Her counselors were nice, and she enjoyed all the activities the camp offered. She enjoyed meeting new friends, and every year hated when her time at camp came to an end. Next passage is from Margaret Atwood's story, Death by Landscape. Cheerfulness was required at all times, even at breakfast. Loud shouting and the banging of spoons on the tables were allowed and even encouraged at ritual intervals. Chocolate bars were rationed to control tooth decay and pimples. At night, after supper, in the dining hall or outside around a mosquito-infested campfire ring for special treats, there were sing-songs. What do you feel more, the pleasure or the displeasure? Which one? Absolutely. Oh, mosquito-infested campfire ring. I've been there, done that. Pimples on faces. They won't let me have any chocolate. You hear those details? We don't have any details in the one before. Consistency versus inconsistency. How much time do I have? 5 minutes. I got 5. We human beings, we may be consistently inconsistent, but we're not going to wake up extroverts one day and introverts the next day. We have our own unique basic human nature, right? That doesn't mean we don't have a plethora of emotional depth in there, but we are not going to change our human nature. This is not a soap opera, okay? So you've got to align your character's emotions with who they are. On the other hand, people are not flat. They've got more than a handful of emotions. And so there's within any real person or character's nature, there's a wide range, tremendous range of emotion. So I like to think about it like this, that we are as humans or as characters in stories consistently inconsistent. It's not like Aunt Matilda would mourn her son's death in one paragraph and happily go shopping with her friend in the next paragraph, unless she's a sociopath, right? So consistently inconsistent means characters move believably, not irrationally, from one emotion to the next. And hey, I can go from elation to despair in less than 60 seconds. I can do that in real life. So by golly, I ought to be able to do that on the page, right? It's possible. It happens all the time. But you've got to be able to lead the reader. Okay, last thing. What do we want to do? What are some things that would be helpful in creating real human emotion? We've talked about cliche. Let me get down. One thing I haven't mentioned is the power of suggestion. Sometimes using props rather than stating the obvious can help show emotion. Let's say you're writing about your cousin Penelope who's sad Are you just going to tell them she's sad? No, that's too much summary. You can do a little bit of that. You got to show me she's sad. What kind of props? She's in her bedroom. And this is a grown woman, by the way. What kind of props are around that house or in that bedroom that show me she's sad? Too many wine bottles in the recycling bin. Tissues spread all over the floor. Curtains drawn. You get my drift. Props are they're those details. They're very, very powerful. You might also consider unpredictable action. We expect people to cry when they are sad. Is that the only thing people do when they're sad? Heck no. Some people scream. I got a good friend who laughs when it's partly nervous, but he's sometimes really like down and disappointed too. So always consider unpredictable action because that's going to stun your reader. That's going to get your reader's attention. And in my last 2 minutes, let me say one of the most, maybe the most important aspect to remember when writing with emotional honesty is that emotion is not one-dimensional. We can be, like we said, with Delia, she can be comforted and discomforted at the same time. You can be anxious and looking forward to something at the same time. I think about a wedding, one of my best friend's weddings. I was the maid of honor. This has been 10,000 years ago. And I'll never forget the groom. They were kneeled over on the Bible, and the groom was dripping sweat. Sweat was dripping onto the Bible page. And I thought, what they going to do about that? And they didn't do anything about it. But he was happy. I mean, he was in love with his almost wife. He's in love with her. He wants to get married, but he's feeling some other emotions too. He's scared as the devil and he's nervous. So don't ever think with your characters you're just going to do one emotion, right? Sometimes it might be one predominantly, but the complexity of feelings is what really draws us. So I wish we had more time. But remember, your story will live forever. And each person's life touches so many others. And we do it through how we express ourselves and our feelings. Okay, I did it.
Good. All right. Well,
45
I
minutes.
think at
And
this.
there's the last one for you to look at. So,
Wonderful.
thank you for coming and listening. I hope this has been of benefit, and that I'm so sorry I had to rush. It's really hard to get through this in 45 minutes. I'm downstairs signing copies of Bells for Eli and would love to sign a copy for you if you're interested. Thank you.
We do have time if anyone has any. Yeah, we have a little window set aside in case. I think we have time for one or two questions. So the question was, do you consider yourself to be more of a plot-driven writer or a character-driven writer?
I am very much a character-driven writer. I love plot. I love for things to be happening. I love to be turning that page. But if I can't care about the people, then eventually those events are not going to matter to me. That's just me. Oh, it's not just me. It's a lot of writers. Another question. Sure.
So do you use a particular structure to outline your stories?
With Bells for Eli, I've just completed my second novel, and it's a bit more outlined because it has 3 points of view. With Bells for Eli, I was a teacher for 33 years, so teachers are planners. So I had this outline. I thought I knew what was going to go in every chapter. After the third chapter, I never looked at it again. I don't know where it is. I knew the event that was going to inspire the novel. I knew what the penultimate chapter was going to be. I didn't know how I was going to wrap it up. And you know why? because Delia and Eli and their parents and their friends and the people in that town came alive, and they began to take on lives of their own, and they began to show me where they wanted to go. Yes, I knew certain things I wanted to happen, but they were developing their personalities, and it had to happen their way. Yes, and that people can tell you that characters take on lives of your own, and you can believe it or not, but I'm here to tell you they do. So that's the answer. I intended to be a plotter, but I decided to let the characters dictate the story.
All right, well, let's give one more round of applause to Susan. Thank you today.